Addiction never affects just the addict. It affects all of us. Recovering from addiction and alcoholism is also a life-changing battle for families dealing with a loved one's addiction. Numerous programs support addicts as they reclaim their lives, while their families face their own challenges without the same guidance. You're listening to Voices in Courage with KL Wells, where we transform the lives of the families and loved ones of addicts and alcoholics from surviving to thriving in the midst of chaos. Tune in as we highlight vulnerable stories of families who have addicted relatives and friends and learn how they have dealt with the challenges of isolation, desperation, and shame. If you are seeking ways to live your best life, then we welcome you into this safe space. Be a part of change today with your host, KL Wells.
Hi, I'm KL Wells with Voices in Courage, and welcome to everybody who's listening to this today. I am very excited to have Rachelle Babler on with me today. I met her a few years ago through a mutual friend of ours, and she is delightful and an edge dweller and an adventurer that just speaks to my heart. And so TED Talk speaker and international best-selling author, co-author, and an entrepreneur and an advocate that just happened to grow up in Southern California. So I'm going to let her tell her story. I think that is a more powerful way to kind of go about this thing that we call podcasts, and we'll take it from there. So welcome, Rachelle.
Thank you, KL. I'm so excited to be here today and share a little different part of my journey, which I'm excited about. So my story starts in San Diego, really. This is where I grew up. And my father was in the Navy and got transferred down here from Los Angeles when I was like just a couple years old. So San Diego is all I know. We were fortunate enough to stay here. He didn't get transferred anywhere else. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom. I have two sisters, and we all grew up here in North County, San Diego. And most of us that are still here are still in San Diego area. You know, when I was growing up, I always was attracted to, helping others, but to medicine in particular. And when I was in high school, I was a student athletic trainer. I took CPR first aid. I loved it. I thought maybe I would go down the physical therapy route. I became a student trainer in college too. Then I did lifeguarding. I got my EMT. And when I got my EMT, I decided after about a year, I went and pursued my paramedic license. So I went through paramedic school, which was very challenging. It was a 50% failure rate. And so half of my class failed. And there were 14 of us that graduated.
Wow.
And so I became a paramedic. I was trying to save lives in an ambulance and running 911 calls all throughout San Diego. I was pretty young at the time when I got my license in my early 20s. So I got thrown into very interesting situations at a very young age. And it really opened my eyes to life and humanity and, really that your life can change at any moment, from an accident, overdose, suicide. I mean, all these things that I experienced and seen. I delivered 5 babies. I brought life into the world, and I, was there when people left this world. And so it was a really great experience. I'm glad I did it. And then the contract was coming up for negotiations, and many of us weren't going to get carried over. So a lot of us started going back to school. So I started taking some classes at a local community college, and I took a forensics course, and I got hooked. I really was fascinated with that. And so the guy that was teaching the class was in charge of the crime lab at Escondido PD here in North County, San Diego. And I got hired there to work part-time. So I went part-time as a paramedic, was working as a medic and in the crime lab, going back to school. And then they eventually hired me full time. So I was initially a forensic specialist, where I went to crime scenes, processed crime scenes, collected evidence, went to the autopsies to photograph and collect evidence off the bodies. And, I did a lot there because it was a very small lab, and we kind of the jack of all trades. So I did the fingerprint comparisons. I did, presumptive blood tests, for the presence of biological fluids on things. So I did a lot of different things. And then after a couple of years, I got hired with a larger agency, and I specifically was hired to work in fingerprints. So I did that for almost 20 years. I analyzed latent prints from crime scenes, from evidence. I, helped with identification of unknown deceased persons. So we'd go to the and fingerprint John and Jane Doe's. And then I did research, and the research that I'd done, I ended up creating a course out of it and speaking at forensic conferences all over the country. I got nominated onto a prestigious forensic board. We were creating standards and guidelines for the entire country for my discipline. And it was, a really great experience. I loved it. I was at the height of my career. And then one day I decided to quit. And I was flying back from a meeting, and I remember my intuition just really started speaking to me, and it was getting louder and louder and louder. And it was to the point where I couldn't ignore it anymore. There was, my intuition's just like, there's more for you to do in this lifetime, and it's not forensics. You're done. You did your service for almost 20 years. And so it was really interesting. I kind of been hearing it and I started doing some personal development work after my brain tumor. I'll get back to that in a second. Really meditation. When I started meditating, that, meditation, if you want to work that intuition and strengthen muscle and voice, meditation's the way to do it. And, it gets to a point where, I think many times we'll say, I should have trusted my gut. I should have listened to my gut. We don't, but intuition, it's right. But when you meditate, you won't question it. You won't say it anymore. You'll be like, this is what my intuition's saying to do. I'm going to do it. And so that's kind of like how I felt. And I remember a lot of people were like, what are you doing? At the height of your career, people knew my name and my discipline. I was, teaching all over the country, and I knew it was, I remember I was talking to somebody at one of the co-working spaces, and he said, you're having your awakening. And I said, yeah, it is my midlife awakening. And, many people were like, you're having a midlife crisis. Go back to, I had people tell me, go back to your job, go back to work. And
sure.
And, so I was on a mission to find my why and figure out what I was meant to do in this lifetime. And becoming an entrepreneur was very different, especially at the age of 46, because I'd been consistently to a job Monday through Friday for, 20 something years.
Right.
So this was a whole new world for me. The catalyst to me quitting too was in 2008. I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. I was very scared at that time. It was growing fast. I had a newborn and an 18-month-old. I was married.
Oh, wow.
And, I went down all the deep, dark rabbit holes of my kids won't know their mother. And, I went through a really challenging time. And for a year, it was trying to figure out what to do. Treatment. My insurance denied my treatment request that I wanted after I'd done a lot of research and to find out what treatment, because at 1% of all brain tumors, it's pretty rare. And that was when I really jumped into my personal development journey. And, if you told me to go walk on coals or eat crickets to get rid of that tumor, I would have done anything, because I was like so determined to like fix it and get rid of it so that I could stick around for a while. And that was when I started visualizations and meditations and affirmations, and it opened up my world to like this whole other world that I like almost like never knew existed, and the conditioning and programming of what I did with my life. And so that's really what, over the years then, until I quit my job, I was just really, really feeding my soul and finding out, who I was, rediscovering myself. I'd gone through a divorce, during that period too. And I look back now and I think, thank God I quit my job, because the year after I did, my sister and my father both passed away within 4 months of each other. And had I not quit my job, I would have not had all that time with them. So, I think God, universe, whoever, source, whatever you want to call it, knew that it was time for me to take a different direction, because there was a lot coming for me. I'm a huge advocate. It's something that I love I think being a paramedic, I advocated for patients, and being in forensics, I advocated for, the truth of what happened. And, I was a piece of the puzzle of cases. And when I had my brain tumor, I had to advocate for myself. And luckily I have a health background, and being a paramedic, I know a lot about medicine and the body. And, I got to help my sister and dad during that time, and, really advocate for them when I felt it was needed. And so, yeah, I've had an interesting journey of jobs, careers, of evolutions with my changes with myself. And, I just had my birthday last Friday, and every year is just so much more fun. I mean, I can't explain it other than, people are so afraid to, get older. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel so more comfortable, much more comfortable in my skin. I don't care about a lot of things I used to. I feel lighter. Life is just much more enjoyable, because I have all this noise, in my head and space constantly, like I did growing up. And so it's been a fun journey for sure. I wouldn't change anything in my life. None of it. It's all been a gift to me to be a mirror for me on things to work on and, evolve through.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, although I didn't know parts of your story, your spirit and your kind of availability to lean into the gifts and lessons and opportunities embedded in it all is really such a great example for others that get caught in the crisis and the trauma and the drama of life, addiction, these things that we deal with. And so there's a counterweight to it, which is what you're speaking to, which you're speaking my language.
Yeah. And it's not for, doing the work and diving into your own personal stuff is not for the lighthearted. It's not easy, but I'm telling you, when you get to the other side and you have a breakthrough, or you see, you become the observer of your life and the ways of being and what you've been doing. And you've been, me playing victim, or, self-sabotaging myself, or the limiting beliefs and all that. It is so worth it. I mean, I will forever be a student. I will always hire a coach, or in a program, or read a book, or listen to podcasts or something, because when you start to evolve and feel so much lighter, you just want more. I become addicted to that. I'm addicted to my growth.
And you're light.
Yes.
Yeah. Because you have this light about you that is just so captivating. And that's when you're on, when you're turned on, you don't want to get turned off. However, when the darkness does show up, you know how to access the light, which there's always going to be darkness showing up. And when we're at our lightest, that's when the darkness shows up to challenge us again. So it's fascinating.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. And it's amazing how rooted some of our ways can be from, things that we didn't even know where it came from, or from our childhood, or, what we saw growing up, or, things like that. So, I don't blame my family, or, I think my parents parented the way they knew how, and the way they were taught. And, they say every generation gets a little better. Hey, we all learn from each other. Nobody teaches us how to do a lot of these things when we become parents, and we have children. And so yeah, there's nothing but love for and compassion for everybody that's been in my life, because I see where they were at.
Yeah. And that's a remarkable gift, to actually lift those veils away, and to be able to recognize, they were doing the best they could. And they loved you in the only way they knew how.
Yes.
And so I think that frees everybody.
Yes, it does. And, even if you don't have a conversation with them, I think that thought, it will connect to them. I think we're mostly connected with our thoughts and our stuff with our family and the people closest to us. So I think that, you can still do a lot of healing without speaking it, but obviously if you can, that's great. But I think even just healing that part and sending that love to that person is very powerful.
Yeah, very, very powerful. Yeah. So speak to this journey that you went on relative to 34 days dry and why, and what did you learn?
Wow. So, I will say with all this stuff I've done in my life and programs and coaching, and doing a dry just for those 34 days was one of the best things I've ever done in my life. And my journey with alcohol started at pretty a young age. I was drinking in high school quite a bit. A lot of us, I live in San Diego. We're close to the border, and we would go down to Tijuana and we would party in high school. I can't believe I did some of this shit. And I told my parents, so they know now about it, but I couldn't imagine my almost 16-year-old being down in TJ partying. And that's what we did.
Yeah.
So it was such a different time. And I guess, being naive, you just don't think about all the dangers and those things that could happen. But so my journey with alcohol started pretty young and, carried into college. And it wasn't like I had to drink every day. But when we would get together and hang out, we drank a lot. And so alcohol has always been a part of my life because of this social aspect, I think.
Yeah.
And when I got diagnosed with my brain tumor, I remember I was, again, so scared that I went to a holistic practitioner. He told me to eat these things, cut out these things. One of it was alcohol, caffeine. And I, for 6 months, did this really clean eating. I took his nasty herbs every day, drank them for 6 months. And I never felt so better in my entire life. But, and I didn't really think of the alcohol as like, okay, I need to quit it because I have a problem, or I need to quit it because, whatever reason. It was more because I was just, my whole health needed like a rehaul, a haul.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really think about like the not drinking during that time because I was so focused on my brain tumor and my health.
Sure.
So this time, I would say that was like the longest period I'd gone without alcohol in my entire life. And like I said, I'm more of, I would say, a casual drinker on the weekends, or if I met a friend, I'd have a drink. But this year, when the new year started, I saw all these people posting about dry January. I was like, wow, there's a lot of people doing dry January. What, should I be doing that? Like, and I would see them share and, share their posts on, how much better they felt. And so it just kind of piqued my curiosity. And it wasn't like I felt like I had a problem and needed to stop, but I was just curious more as to what if I did stop, and like, how would I feel, and what would it, again, I'm a forever student. What feedback would it give for me? Holy shit, like I had no idea what would transpire from that. It was really amazing. The first thing was like the first week, I don't know how many people DM'd me, texted me, called me, and was like, hey, I'm watching you. I'm curious about stopping too. I've thought about it. I don't think I can do it. Or I would get I've done it. It's great. You're not going to want to drink again. Or I got, I've been sober for this many years, and these are some tips if you need help. I mean, it was just like this constant thing. I mean, see me on social media, I post a lot of stuff, but it was the alcohol, me going dry, that sparked so much interest. I was really surprised about it. And so I would give kind of an update on the weekly as to where I was. And I tried to share as vulnerably as I could as the feedback I was getting for myself. And, after that 34 days, it really opened my eyes to my habits, my crutches, was I using alcohol as a crutch? Was I using it when I was stressed? Was I using it just to do it without even thinking about it? Like,
Right.
because I met a friend, I have to have a drink, versus I don't have to drink. And, I have a band, we play at dive bars and bars here in San Diego. And I thought that would be a little challenging. Sometimes I would have a drink to take the edge off a little before I got on stage, just so I was a little more relaxed. So it was like all those little things that I started to notice about myself. And then, I was even like, gosh, and I haven't really shared this part, but, did I have maybe a little bit of a problem with it? If I was using it as a crutch or when I'm stressed or, and is it a bad thing or when does it become a bad thing? So all these things were just stirring in my head, and it gave me such great feedback. But the biggest thing was just having that clarity in my mind to really be the observer. I've become the observer of everything I do. In interactions with people, my ways, my thoughts. Interesting. I get curious about everything. And is this me, or are these just my thoughts? Is this really happening? I kind of do that because that's really helped my growth and to discern between what's true and not true. So yeah, doing that was probably one of the best things I've ever done. And I had a lot of people reach out, and I had a couple people, say they're going to try too, they're going to do a month. And, so it's just, it was really interesting to me that, again, like from all the posts that I do, that was like the one that piqued so much curiosity. But I know statistically, we know post-COVID, a lot of people were drinking more. I know my friends and I would joke, like, is it wine 30? And it'd be like the early afternoon, because we're all stuck at home. We're stressed out. We had our kids full time. We were trying to do homeschooling and work and, trying to make sense of all the madness and chaos going on in the world and uncertainties. So, so what do? You drink. That's when the Zoom happy hours started. So yeah, there's no judgment for me, for anybody who does whatever they want. There's no judgment on my past, other than it's just feedback for me to learn. And it was a huge learning thing for me.
Yeah. And so I love the way that you frame this in terms of feedback and observation. And so it's just dropping the whole judgment, right, wrong, good, bad. It doesn't exist. It's just observing and what works and what doesn't work for me. And if more people would adopt that kind of mindset, I think we live in a whole lot more happier world. Because we're so steeped in judgment, so I'm super curious as to what did you discover about your relationship with alcohol?
What I discovered is that I mimicked what I saw growing up. I saw people in my family drink when they were stressed, and drink when finances weren't good, and drink when there were maybe some heavy or stressful situations. And I mean, I see patterns, and I just saw that there were many times I drank where I didn't need to, and I didn't need to drink as much as I did. And maybe there were times where I didn't have the control to stop myself. To can I just go out and have one drink? Always two, maybe three, so it just was, really now being more mindful of what I'm doing. I don't see myself going back to the way I was as far as drinking. I know I can go out and have a good time with friends and not drink. I told myself during this time too, that I was going to do a 30-day dry. And then there were no expectations or outcomes as to what I would do after that. I was just going to leave it open to see what happened. I think, for me, it may be a time where I celebrate. Like this Friday, I have a birthday gathering with some friends, and I'll probably have a glass of wine, but I don't need to have a lot. And I don't, and it maybe eventually it will completely leave, but the clarity piece and moving into the new year, moving into my new birth year, I really enjoy that and crave that. Especially when you're working so much on your growth, you don't want things to hinder or get in the way or be a crutch to that growth, because when you start to elevate, you feel like all the yumminess and greatness bliss from it.
Yeah.
That then it, and that's why I think, gosh, if we could teach our kids at a young, early age, self-care, self-love, meditation, man, would this whole world be a different place.
Oh, absolutely. No question. And I would add one more, and that is to ask for help.
Yes. That is, don't be ashamed of asking. Yes.
Yeah. No matter what's going on. And so, yeah, I think there's actually almost like a pendulum swing now coming out of COVID, where people are doing what you're doing, is like abstaining enough to be able to get clearer and re-examine what their relationship is with alcohol and why. And on a much bigger level too, who do I want to be in the world and why? Yeah. So
I think COVID was, there were many benefits to it where we paused. We were forced to be at home, and we were forced to sit with our thoughts all day without, all these distractions, maybe going to work and being around coworkers or whatever. So I think that, really was a huge blessing to see what was serving us, what wasn't, what we wanted to change. And, there was even something I read about the COVID midlife crisis where, people were really reflecting on their lives because we were forced to. There were a lot of good things that came out of it, but then there were a lot of things that elevated, drinking, domestic violence, things like that, so, but yeah.
Yeah. And I think the elevation in the social ills out of COVID was the big red flag getting bigger and signaling to us that these things don't work and that we are ill prepared for moments of silence and being with ourselves, and also skilling up in terms of creating really meaningful relationships with others.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was definitely great. I think I saw more families connect. I would see families outside walking together, just walking or kids riding their bikes. And it was really nice to see. And then it kind of went away, after the world opened up again.
Yeah.
And, certainly with my kids, we would go for walks, and that part of it, I enjoyed seeing. And, but yeah, sitting with ourselves in silence, boy, do many, people have a hard time with that. And you know what? I can't wait to meditate.
Yeah.
I can't wait. I'm like, this is my time for me. There's so much that comes from meditation, and that's a whole other topic that, I know about, but creativity, just a peace, just there's so much. So I look forward to, I meditate in the morning early before my kids get up. I meditate around lunchtime, and then again before I go to bed. So I was doing it today. Now I do 3 because it's
so delicious.
It is. It's hard to explain, but once you do it, you can't not do it. It's non-negotiable for me. I mean, it's part of my day. And it's, even my kids will do guided meditations. And, when my kids say, "Hey, mommy, can you turn on that meditation app?" I know it's great that they know that where to go to if they need that downtime. Yeah.
Well, what was it? Ariana Huffington wrote Thrive. I don't know if you're familiar with the book.
I've heard of the book, but I haven't read it.
Well, it was born out of her crisis moment when she was putting Huffington Post together and was just exhausting herself. And so she passed out in her office and hit her head against the corner of her desk. So she wakes up in a pool of blood and, doctor, what's wrong with me? And they just said, finally, you're exhausted. and there's no pill for that.
Yeah.
So then she goes on this journey of discovering, okay, so how do we live a thriving life? And meditation is one of the 3 legs to the stool of sleep, meditation, and exercise. And so again, born out of, this trauma incident.
Yeah.
And my experience has been, because I'm older now, is that, 40s, 50s are really powerful ages for accidents or illness to show up, to give us the opportunity to wake up.
Yeah. And, I try to share because I don't want people to have that diagnosis and I don't want them to have that traumatic experience. But I mean, sometimes that can be the biggest gift. It was for me. My brain tumor was, I remember a mentor said, the gift is in the shit. And
yes, it is.
And, it really was for me. And it was in my divorce. It was in, all the times that I felt like I hit rock bottom. I thought you only hit rock bottom once. I had it many.
That's great.
Yeah, you don't hit rock bottom once. You'll hit it several times. But when you are at rock bottom, there's only one place to go, and that's up.
Yeah.
I look at all those times and I think, those are such gifts. And when I feel that coming, or if I feel the heaviness, get to a point where you can just surrender and just be at peace with whatever is going to happen. That is such a beautiful space to be in.
Absolutely. Well, that's the resiliency muscle being birthed and born and strengthened. And I had a speaker speak to one of my business groups just recently. And she's actually from San Diego also. And she has CF, cystic fibrosis.
Yeah.
And so she's learned a lot about death and dying in her very young life. And one of the things that she talked about was just this notion that when you feel like life's falling apart, it's actually falling together. And we all, on average, as humans, we have these events like about on average every 18 months.
Yeah.
And it is designed, I think, it's the human condition to allow us to continue to grow mentally, spiritually, all the things, and continue to grow and elevate. And so they are all gifts, and it's a mindset framework.
It is. And that has been one of the biggest challenging things for me is, that mindset piece. And I work at it every day still. I have an app on my phone called Remindfulness.
Cool.
And you can put a reminder in there. You can customize it, or you can do it every 20 minutes, every 30 minutes, every hour, every 4 hours. And you can start it at 6 a.m. and it ends at 9 p.m. And I have this thing pop up on my phone every 30 minutes and just remind me that I'm unconditionally loved.
Awesome. I've never heard of that app. So that's definitely going on my phone.
So even whether it's drinking or, reminding yourself where you want to be, or an affirmation, but you can customize it and it'll pop up and you can put pretty tone to it, a sound as it comes up on your phone. My kids are always like, what is that? Chimes,
Yeah. Angels are coming.
But, that's what I need to do to train my mind and get into that space of always reminding myself and feeling a certain way, because a lot of, what you manifest and want is on your feelings. Right. So, so it just gets me to take a second to pause, to, tell myself, and I change what's in it all the time based on maybe what's going on in my life, but it's a great tool.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. So thank you for sharing that, because that will be referred to a bunch of people.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. And it's another reminder that we need these kinds of tools
Yeah.
to keep us intentional and focused on what it is that we want to create in our lives and who we want to become. And what we focus on, we get more of.
Yeah, definitely. And that's one thing I've had to, not like meditate in the morning and then take off for the day and work and forget about it until the evening. It's really become something that I've had to really incorporate into my entire day, because that's what keeps me, like you said, intentional and focused on the outcome, right? What I would like to see. But yeah, it's been a work in progress. I mean, to undo all this stuff that we've had done, it takes work, but you can get there. And when you're really focused, it doesn't have to take a long time.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And so, I mean, in an interesting kind of way, you're just all speaking to the things that are most important for us as humans to thrive.
Yeah. Thriving in the midst of chaos.
Yep. Yep.
Which is what you preach all the time and teach. And I love because, not before meeting you, before a lot of my growth too, but before meeting you, I would not know that you can thrive in the midst of like a personal thing that's happening in your family and stuff like that. And, teaching that too, I would say add that to kids, at a young age. They might not have the perfect family life, but they can still focus on themselves and learn to thrive.
Yeah, exactly. And so, as you get better and better and grow this muscle more and more, you realize that so many things are swirling around us at any given time. And I'd rather be at agency in terms of my own thriving, no matter what's going on around me.
Yeah. What a great feeling that is, huh? I think because my experiences, being a paramedic, I saw death a lot. I saw suffering a lot. I saw, and then in forensics, I saw really horrible crimes and, the worst of humanity and what people do to each other.
Right.
And that was, I think, a lot of me really living. And then my diagnosis was, life can change in any moment. I saw that as a medic. I saw it in forensics. I saw it with myself. And then my sister and father both passing away was another reminder of just to live your life unapologetically. Just do it. Don't have much time here. It goes fast. And, I do a weekly reflection on Sundays for my week, like what's coming up in my week. I kind of be intentional. And, one thing I ask myself is if this was the last week I was here on earth, what would I do differently?
Oh, that's awesome. Say it again.
If this was my last week on this earth, what would I do differently? And if whatever that is, put it down and I do it. And it helps create that momentum to, maybe you're wanting to write that book, or maybe you're wanting to start that business, or maybe you're wanting to, whatever it might be, play guitar. You do it. You don't wait.
Yeah. And that's such a powerful thing, is the questions that we ask ourselves are so critically important to move us in the direction that we most want to go.
Yep.
And we're the ones who can ask us those questions.
Yeah.
It's like, so grab a hold of questions that really serve you to move in the direction that you most want to go. And so that's another tool that's really powerful. And what I'm taking away from this conversation is the comparative contrast between the life you lived previously that had a lot of darkness in it. The life that you live now has all this light. That's extraordinarily powerful to counterbalance what's happening in the world. And you're an example of finding the light in the darkness.
There's always light in the darkness. Always. We just to look at it. We tend to focus on the darkness, and that's it.
Right. Exactly.
Or we tend to focus on what might happen versus what could happen, or, what do we want to happen? So it's just, again, being the observer and being mindful of your, I like to think of myself as like, I just am observing everything. It's all feedback. And, this made me this way. And this made me feel this way. Why was that?
Mhm.
So I've come a long way. I feel like I've come a long way. You've come a long way, baby.
Haven't we all?
And I still feel like there's a lot more to still learn. And, and, it's exciting and it's fun. And it's exciting for me as a mom, I think, because I show my kids that you're always evolving and you're always growing, and you can be a student forever. And it doesn't have to be hard, and being a student, doesn't mean you have to take a class and test and learn this. Like, being a student is like just becoming that better version of yourself each and every day.
Yeah. And that's such a great lesson for younger people to learn, is that learning never ends. And if we're going to be awake for our lives, it's never going to end. And it's what keeps us vibrant and alive.
Yeah.
Is this constant, like, listening to podcasts, reading books, talking to awesome people. This is what life is. This is the vibrancy of life. And in the midst of it all, we have these traumas and dramas and things that we deal with. And we can ride the wave of thriving even in the midst of it.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're coming up against the edge of our time, unfortunately. So is there something that you want to share that you haven't shared so far? And what's your definition of thriving?
What haven't I shared? I think as I evolve and learn more, I think of just, we're here to help each other. It's not all about me and my journey. It's about helping my journey and sharing it, speaking it to help others. But it's all about, being of service to each other. And I think, we just need more of that. I look at my interactions now differently with people. Like, everything's energy, and how I respond to somebody or how I interact with somebody is all something that you can do, like plant these little seeds to, just kind of help make this world a better place. So, I teach my kids a lot. We do random acts of kindness, or we just give somebody a compliment or hold the door, or so I don't know. I just, the more I evolve, the more I just want to be of service to others. I mean, it's a huge part of what I, and I try to share vulnerably and share so that people know that it's not just, we're all going through this together, really.
Right.
And I would say thriving, to me, what the definition of thriving is wow. To thrive is I think, be yourself unapologetically and vulnerably. And I think thriving is a sense of freedom, because when you thrive, it's when you feel free, right? You feel like you can be yourself. You feel like you can speak whatever you need to say and share your truth. You feel like you are lighter, you feel, motivated, inspired. So that's a big definition. But when I think of thriving, I think of those things, that it's kind of a sense of freedom.
Yeah, I think about it that way too, in the same sense that I think about forgiveness. My experience with that was the same thing, was like, oh my God, I'm free, And so thriving is like, oh my God, I'm free.
Yeah, for sure. I would say that with forgiveness too, gives you, when you truly forgive, it gives you a sense of freedom from that. That's holding you maybe back or heavy on you.
Yeah, for sure. So how can people get a hold of you?
So I am on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, and Rachelle Babler, and my website's RachelleBabler.com. So it's RACHELLE Babler, BABLER.com.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I have a feeling some people will reach out to you.
You having me. I love you to death, and
thank you.
Just love what you do, and you're so inspiring to me, Kale, and I appreciate you having me today.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I adore you as well. And I just have learned much more about your journey today, which is just that much more inspiring too. So thank you for bringing the energy, the light, the genuine, authentic person that you are to the table today. Our time is our most valuable resource, and I appreciate yours.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for joining us in this episode. We hope this discussion gives you the empowerment you need during these challenging times. Remember, there is always light after darkness. For more inspiring conversations like this one, subscribe to the show at voicesencourage.com/podcast. We encourage you to share with your friends and family going through similar situations so we can continue to build a strong community of hope and possibility. Start your life-changing journey today. Join our community at voicesencourage.com.